Mistress Munchkin and the Plutonium Dragon, Part 2. So far in our story, Mistress Elfrida Munchkin has been living in a small cottage on the top of a cliff, sent there by her druid order to magically babysit a nuclear reactor known to her as Lumpy Bum. Despite her supposedly living alone, Elfrida's cottage is rather full, what with the twin spirits of place, Maelgwyn and Gaelgwyn, and her somewhat awakened helpful household implements, Fusser, Stuart, Bowley, and Cassie the Cauldron. As our story continues, Mistress Munchkin has already managed to avert a recent nuclear crisis, but at 3 a.m. she is awakened by another cry for help from Lumpy Bum. She woke up in a hurry. The nuclear reactor was calling to her, crying into her mind like a frightened child. Tapping into the sun energy that she carried in her centre, she snapped her fingers to make a little yellow light appear above her head and scurried to dress by its glow, even though she was in a hurry. Working to calm down something as dangerous as a reactor wasn't the time to have your nightdress blow up over your head and blind you. Thick track pants and knobbly crochet jumper pulled on, feet crammed into gumboots that were older than her, she hurriedly pushed open the rickety door with a tortured scrape of wood on the stone floor and ran for the cliffs, with her little yellow light bobbing above her head like a pet canary. Lumpy Bum was glowing at the base. She could see it even with the usual light pollution of the security floods that surrounded it. "That can't be good," Elfrida breathed, coming to a halt at the best vantage point on her cliff. "What's the matter?" she asked the huge conical pile of concrete. "Lumpy, tell me what's wrong." Wind blew off the sea and grabbed at her heavy braid and the floppy hem of her jumper. She staggered and spread her strong legs wider to hold her stance. "I feel sick," cried the huge thing. "I have a storm inside me." "Poor baby," she soothed it with her mind, reaching out her mental arms to hold it in a huge hug. "Let me make it better." The reactor's energy felt like a tornado, swirling up and out and pushing against its walls. It forced her hug away, not because it wanted to, but because the power there was too great for it to hold. It was too great for her, too. "Caradwen, help me, please," Elfrida called. She felt new energy enter her mind and body as the fierce crone goddess of the druids came to her aid, and she used it to wrap her mental arms once more around the giant reactor, building a dome to contain its explosive outburst even as she worked to soothe it. "Hold on, Lumpy," she urged. I can't! Help me!" it wailed. She held on tight. She could see the headlights of vehicles driving away down the long, lonely road that led back to town. "Cowards," she growled, but she didn't really blame them. They didn't have her protection against the radiation. Still, what happened to going down with your ship? It wasn't like they'd be able to drive far or fast enough to get out of range if poor old Lumpy Bum really blew his stack. She sent more soothing energy to the reactor, feeling into the whirlwind as much as she could, trying to find the center of the problem, trying to cool it, to calm it as she went. There it was, the problem, and it wasn't one she could fix. One of the core elements was gone, melted away. "Oh, by the Dagda's red beard," she swore only to herself, though the little light above her head glowed brightly for a moment from the force of her emotion. "Lumpy, I'm so sorry," she said. "You have a bad tummy ache. You need to be sick and I can't stop it. I can hold you, though, and make it better afterwards. I'm here. The reactor wailed into her mind, "Help me, Grumpy One, help me!" as heat built up inside the great concrete tower and began to radiate, and the last cars drove away. "Gods and guides be with me now," Elfrida muttered, and she felt her army of helpers come around her in the ether. Brigid, keeper of the holy well and flame, Caradwen, always with her. Animals both real and mythical, the yew tree who had taught her about death, her teacher Merlin, the Morrigan, who always liked a good fight, Thor, god of thunder and justice, so many others. They huddled close now as she pulled energy from them and from all around her, and from the considerable store that she kept inside herself too. And as poor old Lumpy Bum blew, she was there to catch every scrap of radiation, all the heat, all the death and destruction, and convert it into something less harmful. Silence. Elfrida lowered her arms, feeling sweat run down her back under the lumpy sweater and catch the wind to turn to ice against her spine. Wind tugged at the tendrils of hair that had fallen out of her braid and over her nose, tickling her. She hardly dared to look at what she had done, but look she must. The reactor was all dark now, no lights anymore, but no glow either. It sat like a lump of rock, almost impossible to see on the cliff in the dark night. "Grumpy one?" it asked tremulously. Elfrida breathed a sigh of relief. "You're all right?" she asked. "I feel tired," it said to her, mental voice far weaker than she was used to. "I need to sleep." "Sleep then, Lumpy," she told it. "When you wake up, you'll feel much better." She felt the reactor go away from her, settle into somnolence. It was okay, but the power it usually wielded was gone. Gone in one explosive event that might have made it dangerous for 1,000 years or more, but instead had been converted to what? Elfrida suddenly sat down, plump, right on the cold, wet grass. "Phew," she said to herself, suddenly feeling drained and tired. "Disaster averted, I think." She looked suspiciously at the dark, sleeping silhouette of Lumpy Bum, but it still sat innocent under the night sky. "I think disaster averted," she said more brightly. That's when she noticed that the golden shine of her little overhead canary light was no longer golden. Instead, she was bathed in a kind of purpley, silvery light that cast a shadow of her foreshortened form on the grass ahead of her and made her shiny gumboots, normally black, look like they were made of metal. Spoke too soon, methinks," Elfrida grumped, and she took up her courage once more to bend her head back, and look up at the sky directly behind her. End of part 2.